All right, guys, I just wanted to look real fast at a strategy for attacking the DBQ, especially with these prompts here. When we look at some of these past DBQ prompts, obviously, I'm not going to answer these. I'm not going to give a thesis to any of these. We don't have docs for any of these. But what I do want to do is kind of just take a second to show you how you would attack these. All right, since we didn't really get a chance to look at these too in depth in class, I want to give you an opportunity. I wanted to present an opportunity here for you to just kind of for me to show you where your thinking should go here when you get the DBQ and how you should be kind of attacking it, right? Obviously, you have to remember that you have to remember the steps in which I showed you how to do the DBQ. All right. So first of all, right off the bat, we'll just write them up here real fast, right? When you get the DBQ, obviously step number one is going to be to you want to obviously read the prompt, right? Yeah, you have to know what the prompt is in order to figure out what the heck you're doing. Number two, you have to group the docs. All right. The reason why I always tell the kids to group the docs first after you read the prompt before you even start creating an outline for your particular essay is because this directly sets up your thesis. All right. I cannot tell you the amount of kids I have taught over the years who um, have not grouped the docs first. And essentially, what they've done is they've kind of outlined their DBQ. They have even written their thesis. They've done this beautiful map. And then they get to the docs and they're like, oh my gosh, how can I relate my thesis to the docs? Because it sets up your body paragraph, right? So if majority of your docs are talking about religion, um, or at least, 3 out of the 7 are that you're gonna happy, and religion is not in your thesis in any way, shape, or form, it's just really the economy, female rights, and, political changes, but religion is nowhere in there. How in the world are you going to use those documents to happy? You're gonna lose one point or the other, right? You're either gonna lose uh, the thesis point or you're gonna lose the happy point because they need to be together. They need to be together. They need to go hand in hand. Your body paragraphs flow from the thesis, right? I've said that 1,000 times. All right, number 3, after you group the documents, you should really write your thesis or at least map it, all right? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of where is my thesis going? What are my 3 topics? Are they religion? Are they the society? Are they politics? Is it the economy? Where am I going with my thesis? Where is this essay going to go? What am I trying to prove? Right. And then, of course, from there, start writing your body paragraphs. But what I wanted to do just real fast here is just simply look at some of these particular prompts and kind of just to show you where you can go with them. All right. So we don't have the documents here. Obviously, we don't have docs, and that's okay. I just kind of want to show you where you can go with these, even if you don't have docs. All right. And I'm going to assume that these documents would be talking about what I'm literally about to talk about here. All right. So let's look at this one here. Evaluate the extent of change. Can I do a different color? Evaluate the extent of change in American ideas of independence from 1760 to 1783. Well, the first thing I notice about this one is it says change, right? So you're going to have to talk about how something went from A to B and what caused that change. All right. So I'm just going to kind of map some things out here. Evaluate the extent of change in ideas about American independence from 1760 to 1783. Well, a couple of things here. We went from colonists to American, right? There was a movement from salutary neglect to mercantilism. Yeah, we can say mercantilism. We can be more specific, though. You know what you can say to be more specific? Things like the Navigation Acts. And what I would contextualize here, if I was outlining this one in purple, my context would definitely be debt in the French and Indian War, which directly caused this. All right. So we go from salutary neglect to mercantilism as seen through the Navigation Acts. We go from this colonial ideas of being kind of subjects of the king to Americanism, a new identity. This was really rooted in colonial assemblies, for that colonial assemblies during the period of salutary neglect. Okay, and I'm gonna again, I don't have docs here. I assume docs would talk about these two things I just mentioned. But with American Ideas of Independence too, we went from kind of being I'm gonna tie the economy in here. We went from being economically dependent on Britain to independent. All right, to independent. So we went from like having an economy that was very based upon trade with Britain, in terms of like the consumer revolution with the British, how the colonists were the main consumers, the main purchasers of British goods, to hey, we can kind of run independently now. We can trade with the French. So right here already, what I'm trying to show you is uh, we haven't even looked at the docs, because there are no docs, because this is not a real DBQ, but there would be. We have a shift here, we have a shift here, and we have a shift here. Body paragraph number one, number two, number three, and I've even thrown in some vocab words, right? So that's how I would attack that one. Let's look at 2017. I'm going to skip the first one, explain the rise of new conservative movement from 60 to 80, the 1900s, that is. I'm going to skip that because, of course, we didn't really talk about that yet. We're going to talk about that this week pretty in depth. All right. Let's look at the rise of women between 1940 and 1960. Well, we'll do this one in do a different color. Blue. All right. So the rise of women. Well, World War II. Okay. So because of World War II, I'm going to do arrows here. Remember, I said your DBQ should really be looking like a math problem. Okay. So women, what were women doing prior to World War II? Well, they were kind of they were, let's see here. I'm going to say World War II. Let's be more specific. The defense industry, defense industrialization. Okay. Gave women roles. So they went from war in the Depression era to defense mobilization. Okay. Rosie the Riveter is a vocab word. Okay. Rise of women too between 1940 and 1960. Well, they already have the right to vote. All right. Let's say here too, our book talks about this actually. In one of the last chapters we did, there's more women in the workforce. Now, there was also a limitation here, because after World War II, they were forced back into domestic jobs, or not domestic, domesticity. All right. Many went back in the 1950s, rise of the suburban, time period. Many did go back into the home, back into those domestic roles. But at the same time, because of women working incredibly, courageously and very hard in World War II, they had more of an opening to work in the workforce. So this is kind of a change here. The other thing I'm thinking about with the rise of women between 1940 and 1960, we have obviously the Sun Belt. Women were uh, I'm going to say the rise of women had a lot to do with civil rights. They were kind of, you can make an argument that women were kind of at the heart of civil rights. Obviously there was a strong black middle class. There was, you know, labor unions supported civil rights and all those things. That's all, 100% true. But women were an active part of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. So I would say that they had more of a louder voice in going from kind of like a worker with Rosie the Riveter in a factory to now leading a civil rights movement. So we can say here they went from like a worker to leaders of the civil rights era. All right. You could look at all the black women in the South and how well they did that, how well they led civil rights era. We're going to skip 2018. Way too specific. I don't like it. We can get back to that later. Um, I like 2019. Evaluate the relative importance of different causes for the expanding role of the United States in the world from 1865 to 1910. If I'm not mistaken, so look, they hit you with relative importance here in 2019. They hit you with relative importance in 2020. That's back to back years. We have not seen a relative importance until or since 2020. And that was a weird year with COVID. Everybody just got a DBQ. Nobody got MCQ. Nobody got SAQ. It was just one DBQ. And I think a lot of kids even did it from home. So that's kind of your antennas should go up there. We have not gotten, I repeat, a relative importance prompts and since 2020. If you did get this, all right, let's look at, and we'll do this in purple. If you did get relative importance, right, and you see that, what you're doing is, and please pay attention here, you need to list, first you list the reasons, okay? Then you have to list their importance in order. So a lot of kids will say the different causes for the expanding role of the United States in the world between 1865 and 1910 was industrialization, tariff, and Reconstruction. And then they'll go on to their body paragraphs. But you cannot get the point here for relative importance unless you specifically, right? Unless you specifically state the reason of the reasons, but in the importance, in an order of importance, right? So you could say, due to, firstly, and most importantly, Reconstruction, secondly, followed by the role of the tariff, and third, to a lesser extent, but nevertheless important, the rise of industrialization, right? So let's kind of answer this question here. I get rid of this for just a second. Let's answer this question here, which asks us to evaluate the relative important causes of the um, expanding role of the United States in the world from 1865 to 1910. So, uh, number one, I'm going to go with one of the relative important causes of different causes for the expanding role was simple imperialism. Okay, 1910, we invade the Philippines in 1898. We go to war with the Spanish in 1898. Number two, relative importance of different causes for the expanding role of the United States in the world from 1865 to 1910. I would say we have an industrial economy. Okay. And number three, we have, this is where I'd have to see the docs. Obviously, I'm working with no docs here. I would say, I'm tempted to go with Western migration, but Western migration falls under the industrial economy, as does the rise of the corporation. I would probably say here, it's a stretch, but you could make it work, that the United States was a leader in reform movements of the late 19th century, right? So, imperialism, okay? So this is my order. I think number one, imperialism is very important is probably the most important reason, followed by an industrial economy. Because the reason why I put imperialism first is because the industrial economy, this capitalist industrialist economy in the late 19th century isn't possible without imperialism, right? So oil, steel, gas, all that stuff during that Gilded Age in this big industrial economy isn't possible without imperializing the world. You could go with reform movements here. I I I would say, or another possibility is immigration, that many people from the world came here to work as immigrants, which fueled the industrial economy. The thing why I'm a little nervous with using immigration here is, and even westward migration, is because they both fueled this. Okay, Western migration and immigration fueled an industrial economy, which led to an expanding role of the United States in the world. So be careful there because some of these reasons for relative importance, you think it's a separate category, but it might actually fall into one of the categories that you had already listed. So this is the importance. And I'm going to put imperialism first, as I said, over the industrial economy because imperialism is what gave rise to this industrial economy. So you have to list the importance, okay? You have to list the reasons, I'm sorry, and then put them in order of importance and explain why. All right, 2019 is the last time we saw the progressives. Evaluate the extent to which so it's been 7 years, right, since we've seen the progressives. They could pop up again. It's been a minute. I mean, let's take a look here. It's been a minute since we've seen anything uh about a revolutionary time period. There's revolutionary time period here, but it's about slavery, and this isn't the revolution. 1783. This is the beginning of the Federalist era, really. Articles and then the constitutional era, I would say. So we have not seen relative prompt with relative importance. We haven't seen Reconstruction ever, as I've said, and we have not seen anything about the American Revolution since 2018. It's incredible. It's been a while. Um, if it's not going to be on Reconstruction, for 2026 when this video is being dropped, I bet you any money it very well could be on the Americans' relationship to government and the role of government, either during the American Revolution, how Americans' ideas of government changed or shifted or whatever during the American Revolution, and then post. Maybe you might even get a compare contrast one this year. You can write it down. I'm marking that one. That's going to be my actually my third guess after uh, Reconstruction, which I think is going to be number one. That's my best guess. Number two, westward migration, and then of course the one I just said here. All right, evaluate the extent to which the progressive movement fostered political change in the United States from 1890 to 1920. So this is you can start right off the bat. It's a nice little guess here. We're going to say that the change was large. Okay. What's a nice way to put it? And this is how you can get a 5. Be careful here. If it let's just this is where you have to know yourself. If you're not a strong writer, if you feel like you're a lot better on the MCQ, maybe even the SAQ to an extent, but you feel like you're just not that strong with the DBQ, you feel like you can probably pull out a 5 out of 7, but a 7 out of 7 is going to be a stretch, then don't do this. But if you feel pretty confident in your writing, you could say it was large extent, but limited. That's complexity. That's analysis. It left behind blacks. It did not fundamentally change U.S. politics. Right? Okay, so that's kind of just a nice hint there. All right, so how did the evaluate the extent to which the progressive movement fostered political change in the United States? Again, I have no docs. I'm just going off of no docs here, just for fun. Evaluate the extent of change which the progressive movement fostered political changes in the United States. So here we go. Ready? We went from the political. Here's number one. We went from the political machines basically owning the city to basically regulation. We went from a oh my gosh, I totally cannot spell that. Laissez-faire government to an active regulatory government. Political changes as well. Here's the big one for number 3. I'm going to write number 3 over here for because it's really political changes. Is that the progressive ideas? This is a really good reason. Progressive ideas became a heart of the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party in the progressive era became the party of progressivism. It became the party of regulatory affairs. And this goes back to what I talked about earlier last week, which is the Democrats realized with Woodrow Wilson is that as the corporation grew and as the power of the wealthy grew in America, so must the regulatory state of the government grow to try to regulate it, moderate it. So again, arrows here. I got my 3 reasons. I bet you any money one of the docs this year from 2019 on this particular prompt was William Jennings Bryan, "You shall not crucify man on a cross of gold." But so far in each one of these DBQ prompts, we have seen how we go from something to another thing, and we've shown developments through these arrows here. And let's do one more. 2020 looks good. Um, hmm, that's interesting. The United States developed a national identity between 1800 1855. What the heck? Oh man, this is so easy, right? Citizenship between 65 and 1920. Look at the amendments, 13th through 15th amendments. Let's go with this one, 2022, make it a little bit harder. Evaluate the extent to which the United States developed a national identity between 1800 and 1855. All right, what's going on during this time? Well, Andrew Jackson, right? So reason, do a quick development here. What does Jackson do between 1829 between 1829 and 1837 when he's president? He will expand the franchise. So we developed a national identity by more people voting. So we went from property qualifications, right? Property qualifications to basically, white, poor men can vote. All right. So that's certainly, oops, I don't know what that is. That's certainly political. Okay. Another reason here. Reason number 2, how we developed a national identity. 1800, 1855, I would say um, we developed a national identity through political parties. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. We went in this era right here sucks up a lot of political parties. It's got the first and second party systems in it. Does it not? The Federalists are going to die off with the War of 1812. So we go from developed national identity. We go from like um, politics being local to politics being national. What do you mean by national, Mr. Spring? Well, what I mean is like organizing voters and getting your base out to vote, and politics expanded for everybody to join it, except of course women who are still limited and blacks during this time because obviously it's slavery. Now I'm going to be honest with you here. The third one can kind of go anywhere here, especially when you think of the RCPSE model. But this is one of those, maybe because it's late and I'm tired, but that I'm kind of like, I, well, how else did we develop a national identity? Well, economically, what I'm thinking of is, of course, the market revolution. Um, relate the economy to a national identity. Well, I mean, okay, I guess we can. Let's do that. I'm going to say the market revolution. And I'm going to explain to you what I meant there in just a second. We got the market revolution, also known as the first industrial revolution. Okay. Where we went from, and this is where you're going to cook. We went from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. Not completely. This will not completely happen until the second industrial revolution. We can analyze that. But nevertheless, for the most part, we start laying the foundation of an industrial economy. Okay, so these reasons could definitely work. But here's what I was going to say. If you're struggling on like the third, even the second, because political parties, that was a nice catch there. I'm going to be honest with you that I just complimented myself. But, I've been teaching this class for a long time. So that's why it came to me. But for you, it might be a little bit more difficult because this is the first year you've taken this class and all this other stuff. My point is, with this prompt from 2022, it is very possible that you blank and you only get one reason here. But what's going to be your guiding light for the DBQ is the documents. All right. The documents are going to guide your essay. I actually remember this very clearly. I was at this particular time In 2022, I was teaching in Florida, and the kids came up to me, obviously, immediately after the exam, and they said it was something about an identity in the United States pre Civil War. They liked it. I wouldn't say these kids were ecstatic over it. They did like it, this particular prompt. But I do remember they scored really well because they said they got great docs. They got excellent docs, national identity, and they got really good docs here that really helped them. So if here's the good news, if for some reason this year in 2026 the prompt is really going to be a tough one, you can guarantee that the docs are going to be great, right? Because they're not out to kill you, but the docs are going to be pretty good. They're going to get you going. If for some reason the prompt is really easy, like we saw in 2025, evaluate the extent to which um, the role of the federal government in the United States economy changed from 32 to 1980. That's very easy. My kids did great last year, had an 83% pass rate in 2025. However, the docs were horrible, they said. Just awful for this first prompt. Evaluate the extent to which the role of the federal government in the United States changed the economy because it's so easy. So kind of keep an eye on that. Don't panic. Again, if you get the prompt, do not panic if it's on a topic you're not totally familiar about. The docs are going to guide you and make you okay. So as long as you follow the strategy of showing, you read the prompt, you group the docs, that leads you to you map your thesis, you map your paper, and then what you do is you explain 3 reasons. You explain how something went from this to that. Look at how many arrows there are there, right? Went from this to that, this to that. You're solid. You're going to be great. All right. That is all for right now.